Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Didn't realize didn't realize that I was alive yet. Here, this is the 11th newsletter for the year 5856. It is the 8th day of the 3rd month, and let's see. So it starts off Shabbat Shalom to the royal family of Jehovah, and the title of this newsletter. I didn't get the title, but anyway, 40th Jubilee. Since the burning bush, when Jehovah told Moses to go and get the Israelites, a video game, but I found that whenever I would look for Pentecost art, they're just not good enough. But funnily enough, there's a video game which has a mountain, and that mountain kind of reminds me of the mountain where Jehovah, where he went down on the mountain and there's smoke and everything, so it just reminds me of that. So I use that art. So he proposed to Israel, and Israel accepted the terms of the great ketubah. Jehovah told Daniel that he had given the people of Israel 70 Jubilee cycles to get in line with his command, or in the middle of the final one, he would take action and execute the vengeance of the covenant which they had broken. Our countdown clocks on our website were, so here it is, the title of this newsletter. It says, what does it mean by keeping the 50th day of Shavuot? All said it was going to be May the 31st. So we wrote our books with that date in mind. And we warned them of the coming sword spoken 20 had to start this process to war. Exactly what that was, we did not know. All Torah. And we said that if these things did not, then we would take down the website. That was why I instructed James to put the countdown clocks there. Then of all things we were told such precedent, Zohar, that had kept the Passover well before the spring equinox. And when the barley was declared Aviv, well ahead of all the other groups' predictions and declarations, we were ready to accept the facts as they were and not deny the obvious. Jehovah was indeed in charge, and that would follow. Oh, I lost my spot. I just rotated my phone. I lost my spot. Okay, where am I now? The barley was declared Aviv well ahead of other groups. Okay. Jehovah was indeed in charge, and that we must follow that cloud when it moves. This then meant all of my dates and calculations would be off by a month. I had to scramble to prepare for Passover, and the teachings and the many questions on controversies that arise from stepping out from the rest of the brethren. I did not have time to redo all the work involved in calculating the countdown clock, so we left them the way they were and declared a worldwide pandemic. There was absolutely no way I could have called that or planned it. But our King, our Messiah, our husband, he was taking the helm, and he was now driving the end-time events. Many still did not want to believe he was doing this, and they created and invented fancy conspiracies to explain it all away. I was asked, where was the pestilence mentioned? They thought I said war was coming. I had put my emphasis on the war aspect and had neglected the pestilence part, but it was right. And some will say this is the plan of the NWO or other people they want to blame, but they will not admit that it is from Jehovah and him alone. This next step leads to war. This next step cripples nations and makes them unable to do anything in response. Again, this is coming from Jehovah. hyperinflation is coming. So these are the curses for disobedience in Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to 21. The USA has just begun to return people to work because they're going broke being in lockdown, but they do not have the COVID-19 under control yet. Many of you have said and told others, it is no different than the normal flu with the same amount of deaths. Forgive me for not recognizing your expertise in this area. So this plague is going to cling to you. A second wave greater than the first one is going to go through your land. Many people are deferring their mortgages and loans for 3 to 12 months. When this COVID-19 second wave or third wave comes again in 3 months' time or again next year in cold and flu season, what will the world do then? Deuteronomy 28, verse 22. I'm going to read this. It's pretty intriguing. Deuteronomy 28. I'm already pretty much there. I'm in that chapter, funnily enough. Okay, it says here, Jehovah smite you with distress and fever and cold and inflammation and blighting and paleness, and they shall pursue you until they have destroyed you. So, and the previous verse says, Jehovah caused the pestilence to cleave to you until he shall have consumed you off the land into which you go to inherit it. Okay, that's pretty clear. It's a pestilence, it's a plague that it's talking about there. COVID-19 infects the lungs and comes with a fever. It inflames the lungs and causes a burning sensation in the eyes. Let's just look at that again. Yeah, it says fever and cold. So Deuteronomy 28, verses 23 to 44. Okay. I just have to put this article in here now, dated April 29th, 2020. The Federal Reserve has pumped $2.3 trillion into the U.S. economy. It's just getting started. Wall Street is hungry for answers about how much more money the central bank is planning to deploy by Heather Long. So I'm just going to scan over this. So yeah, they basically pumped $2.3 trillion into the economy in the past 6 weeks. So what due to the trade war and now the pandemic, but mostly the pandemic, I would say. So they're going to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. They're going to print as much money as possible. The result of all this bond buying is that the Fed's assets have ballooned to a record level of 6.6 trillion, up from 4.3 trillion in March. Analysts say the Fed is not done yet. The central bank is widely expected to hold close to $10 trillion soon. I don't think they're done either. It's only beginning. They're just trying to put a Band-Aid over the situation. It's like you have a hole in the wall, like a leaky pipe, and what you're doing is putting a Band-Aid over it, but not really fixing the root cause as to why this is happening. It's a Band-Aid solution that will only hold for so long. So we're going to see, here we go. It says here, it does beg the question of how far Washington can go in issuing and monetizing debt before everyone pays a price in terms of higher interest rates, higher taxes, and higher inflation. The Fed is playing a confidence game, and its communications should continue to repeat the message that it will do whatever it takes to nurse the economy back to health. So they're not sure what parts of the economy can reopen safely and when a coronavirus vaccine will be widely available. And I would add if it will ever become available, because we still do not have a SARS vaccine, and this is worse than SARS. So if we don't have a SARS vaccine, what's the likelihood of us getting a COVID-19 vaccine? I'd say slim to none, to be honest. Don't, I mean, there are treatments for it, but in terms of the vaccine, I don't foresee that happening. But, Jehovah willing, we'll see what happens. Don't believe the conspiracy lies that are being bandied about. This is real. And this is being 28 verses 45 to 68. So now, here we are on the cusp of Shavuot 2020, and it is 1 month early. Will anything happen? We will know soon enough. Does any more need to happen on Shavuot, May the 3rd? Or Shavuot, May 31st? To justify those things I have been warning you about? No. Actually, I just want to add that I believe the Jews are keeping it on I think that's when they're keeping it. Anyhow, Jehovah has vindicated all that I have been saying. We only now need to wait for the rest of them to arrive. Pestilence is already here. Famine is at the door. As people struggle with rent or mortgage money and food on the table and no job. President Trump has alienated the USA from the rest of the world with his US policies and tariffs being used as weapons to force others to concede to his demand. Americans are not the most loved people in the world these days. War is coming. sightedmoon.com will not be coming down. We have been vindicated by Jehovah himself that he is following his own words set out thousands of years ago. And then the next subheading reads Shabbat Zoom meeting in Shavuot. So we already had this just a while ago. And the next meeting on Zoom will be tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So those links are in the newsletter. Next subheading reads, In the Mail. You nailed it. Wow, brother, you nailed 2020 as the year. None of us could have predicted just how much evil we'd be up against. Chaim Goldman. Good morning to everyone at Sighted Moon. I so look forward to receiving these nuggets of truth each week. I'm astonished at the number of people I know that think this virus is not from God, because a loving God just wouldn't do that. I'm a key worker here in the UK, but not on the front line like NHS, but for a charity that helps survivors of child sexual abuse. And so many are frozen with fear over coronavirus. I do a great deal of praying, as I know you do. I hope there's not sound in the background. I see a lot of emails popping up, so I apologize if it's interfering with my audio. So anyway, it says here, I do a great deal of praying, as I know you do. Thank you very much for all that you are doing, and for such teaching, which is pure gold to me and others who receive it. Take care over there. I have you in my prayers, Gail, UK. I just want to add, as much as, let me just double check. Familiar with, it's like a Moses thing going on. So Herbert W. Armstrong is one of the people that I believe Jehovah used to restore his feast days to mainstream Christianity, or at least people who come from a Christian background, preaching that the holy days, Leviticus 23, the food laws, a lot of things that are based on Torah. I'm not saying he kept the whole Torah, but for the most part, restored a lot of that. He was used by Jehovah to get that message out, because he did have, at its peak, I think 150,000 members worldwide in the Worldwide Church of God. So yeah, I do believe he was used in that way. And I'm not going to bring up his personal life because everyone has flaws. Everyone has personal battles and struggles and human flaws. We all have our own uh, demon with, but if you really and look at his life and his effect on the world, well, we have. I don't know if we'd have the Hebrew roots movement. I don't know if we'd have the Messianic Jewish movement without Jehovah using him to preach what he did about the kingdom of God and about the holy days and everything like that. So that being said, I also believe that Jehovah is using and has used Joseph Dumond as well, because you have to remember, Herbert W. Armstrong didn't preach about the new moons. He didn't preach the sighted moon. He didn't preach the sabbatical years. He didn't preach about Shemitah. He didn't preach about the Jubilee cycles or the Jubilees and actually keeping them. It's one thing to just say, okay, this is in the Bible, lovely. It's good to know I'm smarter than you. No, it's another thing to actually do them, to actually obey what it says. It's a whole different story. Because if you don't, then you're basically a hypocrite, right? Like if I'm teaching you about, keep the Sabbath holy and, don't work. But in the meantime, you know, during the Sabbath, I'm exchanging money and going out to restaurants, and he called me in for a shift, and it's like, okay, I'll be there. I don't care if it's a Sabbath. I need to make money. I'm a hypocrite. That my faith is of no effect. But I'm just trying to say that I believe Jehovah is using Joseph as well, and you can see, uh, you know, it is important. It is in his Torah. His Torah, first 5 books of Moses, are one of the only, if not the only, pieces of literature that were not merely inspired by the Holy Spirit. They were dictated. He talked to his friend. That's the way it was disseminated to Moshe. So for anyone to debate whether Torah is applicable, whether the Leviticus 25 about the Shemitah, about the Jubilee cycles are still applicable, remember, these are things that Jehovah spoke to Moshe and commanded him to tell the people and commanded him and the people to keep face to face, not in a dream, not in a vision, but face to face and directly from his mouth. And he also wrote those the sayings, the 10 sayings, on 2 tablets of stone. He couldn't get any more serious as face to face and directly from the mouth of Elohim. He actually wrote them with his own finger too. I don't know how much more serious I can get. Like that's to say that the law's done away with is so foolish and so foolish. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, that's my little rant there. Radio interview this week. This week we were interviewed. Oh, I didn't know that. On the podcast that airs in both Vermont and North Dakota called A Different Perspective. He's also called Countdown Radio at this link. So I'm going to listen to that right after I finish this newsletter. That's pretty exciting. A Dutch cover. Remembering the sabbatical years. It says of 2016, 2023, and 2030. Well, I guess technically you'd be remembering 2016 because it's past. But I like how this cover really enlarged the year 2023. I think they can actually get rid of 2016, but it's okay. I'll leave it. That's a really Meerschalag. Sorry, I can't pronounce that correctly. Completed the translation that was begun a number of years ago but never finished. He then went over what was done and re-edited all of it. I'm very pleased to know we can now reach our Dutch brethren with this work. Thank you, Johannan. Pauline Reardon Benji's worked with Johannan to do the graphic artwork for the cover and do all that was involved to produce this. We also have a German version of the riddle book completed and being processed for publishing. And the second volume of the lessons for the kingdom has been completed and is also going to be uploaded very soon. And this is the next heading, counting the Omer to the end. I won't read that. I'll just skip over it. Yeah, it's not too much to read. Okay, the next one says hyperinflation. Are you ready? Do you realize how much money is being printed right now? Okay, I'm going to read from my phone. It's a little bit easier for me to see it. And I think some people listen to this because it's hard to read, and I'm getting that problem right now. So, Richard Palmer, April 28th. Too few are talking about the massive borrowing underway in all major economies as they fight the coronavirus. $1 trillion this year. Of course, they won't literally be printing it. It would be physically very difficult to print that much. I didn't think about that. You'd have to stack $100 bills 630 miles high before you had $1 trillion. At that height, you'd have to worry about satellites knocking your money pile over. Satellites knocking your money pile over. By comparison, $1 billion would be roughly the height of the world's tallest building and was quickly before. From 2009 and the aftermath of the global financial 2018, central banks created about $12 trillion. Now they're creating half of that total in a single year. Wow. What is going on? It's worth taking a few minutes to understand how money is made. After all, it very directly affects your wallet, and I'd say even our ability to provide for ourselves. Buy food. In our modern financial system, money is created from nothing all the time. You even play a role in this process. Anytime anyone takes out a loan, a bank creates money. For $100, the bank isn't taking that $100 out of someone's bank account and lending it to you. It comes from nowhere. There used to be limits on how much money banks could create. Until recently in the United States, a large bank could loan out $1,000 for every $100 it had in assets. But in mid-March, that rule was than ever on the ability for ordinary U.S. banks to create money and loan it out. The ability to create in good times, lots of people are borrowing, and the money supply increases. But when times are bad, banks are unwilling to make loans, quickly causes major problems. This is why the Federal Reserve and other central banks stepped in. If banks were causing problems for the economy by destroying money, then maybe the Fed could fix those problems by creating money. Central banks creating money has long been a taboo. It's too similar to government simply printing money and spending it. Policy that has led to total economic collapse time and again. Look at Venezuela. What's that country called? I think it's Zimbabwe. Yeah, Zimbabwe. It's going to get a lot. But the experts argued that since ordinary banks had stopped creating money, central banks needed to temporarily. It wasn't too dangerous, they argued. Done carefully, they'd be replacing the ordinary money creation that goes on all the time. So the world embarked cautiously on this new money printing called quantitative easing, or QE. Central banks didn't hand the newly created money directly to the government. Instead, they bought government debt and other assets from banks, and they pledged to wind down this printing in the future, to sell the government bonds they had bought and then destroy the money they had created. 12 years later, our currency is not worthless. Most of the newly created money has not been destroyed, but other than that, things have gone well. So central banks are now much more comfortable printing money. They're printing it faster. Restrictions put in place in 2008 are being removed. Both the Fed and the Bank of Japan have announced unlimited quantitative easing with no cap. The Fed is also experimenting with new ways of printing money and injecting it into the economy. It announced in March that it would inject 1.5 trillion into the repo market, basically where banks go to borrow money. On April 9th, the Bank of England announced it would print money and loan it directly to the government, breaking the last taboo on money printing. Although the bank will keep the amount of money it creates this way relatively small. That this is even being considered and under a conservative government is a measure of how extreme the situation is, wrote Foreign Policy. It is also symptomatic that, rather than howls of outrage and immediate panic selling, the Bank of England's decision has so far produced little more than a shrug from financial markets. They are under few illusions about the acrobatics that all the central banks are performing. At quantitative easing, it wasn't counting the more unusual methods of money creation like the Fed's massive intervention in the repo market, so the actual total could be much higher. All around the world, central banks are now creating more money in more different ways and with fewer restrictions than ever before. Even despite the earlier enabling our governments to borrow sums unprecedented in peacetime, while avoiding crippling interest payments. The problem is we're playing with hyperinflation. In 1920s Germany, the government printed money to pay its debts. Zimbabwe tried it, and the result was $100 trillion of banknotes. Even more recently, Venezuela saw inflation of over 1,000,000%. In such a case, your money loses value even as you walk to the store because the government is printing more money as you walk. Is this where America is heading? Experts aren't worried about inflation right now. Oil is so cheap that refineries literally can't give it away for free. The economy is shut down. It's hyperinflation tomorrow. But what happens in the long run when people go back to work? When economies wake up? The economists don't know. We've never done anything like this before. We've never printed this kind of money successfully and gotten away with it. And the restrictions put in place that have allowed us to get away with it, are being removed. Even if we have contained the danger thus far in the next economic crisis, there will be even fewer restrictions. Central banks will almost certainly be printing money and giving it directly to the government. The foundations of our economy are much more, even silver and gold, so can't fully put your trust in those things, only in Jehovah. I just added that. It's not an article. You could spend years saving up 10 sums from nothing. Are they someday going to wipe out your savings? Oh boy. Who knows? At this point, some may suggest buying gold. And there's some wisdom to that. Is functioning, and people are worried that paper money is being destroyed. There will be growing demand for gold, physical gold. Over the short term, gold has potential as a good investment. But if you are looking to gold to save you from the looming economic collapse, you will be terribly wrong. If the economic system collapses and there is no food to eat, people won't care how much gold you have. So I'm not sure if this is still the article, but anyway. Deep down, many investors realize this. That is why some financial advisors recommend learning to farm and becoming self-sufficient. Hyperinflation and a collapse of the dollar, even a gold reserve wouldn't keep you safe. The Bible forecasts an economic collapse so bad that even gold won't be worth anything. Let's look at that. Ezekiel 7, verse 19. It says that people are going to throw gold in the streets. I don't know if that ever happened in the history of the world. So I guess this is prophetic. Once it loads, okay. The economic crisis will be so bad that people only value things that they can eat or that they can use. Looks like my computer may have froze. There's only one sure investment, completely beyond or government, Jesus Christ exhorts his followers, lay not up for yourselves upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves promises to take care of us more surely than any gold can. I'm going to read Ezekiel 7, verse 19. It says here, their silver shall be cast forth in the streets, and their gold shall be despised. So it says here in the Masoretic that they're going to remove their gold, but in the Septuagint says their gold shall be despised. It won't just be removed, they're going to hate it. Their souls shall not be satisfied, and their bellies shall not be filled. They're going to throw away their silver in the streets, and their gold also. They won't care for much for those things, because their souls will not be satisfied, and they're going to be starving to death. That's why, because silver and gold will not be worth very much. It's going to be food that's going to be worth more. So not that gold and silver won't be able to deliver you, because it might be able to in some ways, but won't be able to feed you though. Okay, so let's go back to the newsletter. Invest in God. Yeah, we should invest in treasures in heaven, because those are eternal investments. They will not, those are the most secure investments we can make. Okay. Where am I now? How can you do that? How can you invest in God? Our free book, Mystery of the Ages, is a great place to start. It outlines God's plan for this world and how you can be a part of that plan, and invest your time and money in it. And if you want to know more about godly money management in an uncertain time, our free booklet, Solve Your Money Troubles, has both the practical advice and spiritual guidance you need. So I think this is from a Church of God website, because I don't think Sighted Moon has those books. 2.8 trillion spent in a month, but very question. U.S. adds trillions to debt. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signs the additional $484 billion relief package amid the coronavirus pandemic at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., March 23rd. So I'm not going to read that. I think it's self-explanatory. Over this leaky faucet, not fixing the root cause, only throwing money at this problem. With millions of people now employed by the government, both in America and Britain, essentially being paid to do nothing, why would people want to go back to work? As a nation, we are losing the will to work, the Telegraph reported on April 21st. As Mr. Fleury asked on his radio show if this is the result of a comparatively weak virus, what will happen when real disaster hits these nations? By printing, borrowing money, the U.S. is weakening its security. If it continues in this direction, it will soon be unable. Other powers are going to challenge the United States. What happens when the world has gotten everything that it can from this great superpower and then decides, you know what, it's time to pull the rug from under this, the greatest fall that ever befell any nation, said Mr. Fleury in his April 22nd program. Do you say it can't happen here? Do you think the great God who is able to give them such unprecedented world leadership and power and wealth is not able to take it away from them and throw them, like their ancient forefathers, back into slavery? You need to open your eyes to the fact that Britain's sun already has set. You need to wake up to the fact that the United States, even still possessing unmatched power, is afraid, fears to use it, just as God said, I will break the pride of your power, that the United States has stopped winning wars, that America was unable, with all its vast power, to conquer, living Leviticus 26 contains promises from God in which he says he will bless his people if they obey his law. If they disobey, however, he will curse them. America has turned from God and from his law, and now it is reaping the consequences. Verse 20 reads, "And your strength shall be spent in vain, for your land shall not yield her increase, neither shall the trees of the land yield their fruits." As Americans and Britons bunker down, the coronavirus pandemic has brought Mr. Armstrong's words to life more than ever before. If the handwriting was on the wall when he published the first version of the booklet, The United States and Britain in Prophecy in 1967, the reality could not be more stark than today. In a matter of weeks, the U.S. has added almost $3 trillion to its debt, yielding almost nothing. It is now more evident than ever that the U.S. is fast riding to the greatest fall that ever befell any nation. To more thoroughly understand these prophecies for the immediate future of Britain and America, please request your copy of Mr. Armstrong's free book, The United States and Britain in Prophecy. And I think that's it. Wow, it's actually pretty quick. Okay. I read the comments already before I read the newsletter. There wasn't really much to go on here. But I want to comment on that. The decline of America. Yes, they are still the world superpower. The products, they only copy and make knockoffs of products that other countries make, and then they just create knockoffs. They make not just knockoffs, but very poor quality knockoffs. So things that break, they're not of good quality material. A lot of times they're poisonous, like literally poison. And thirdly, their products have no longevity. So there's no quality control. There's no standards in terms of things like that. So China is really, that's not going to last, even if they do to be a sustainable world power, simply because corrupt, they reject Torah. Elohim will not bless them. They silence all those who preach anything that's even remotely biblical. They not only persecute Christians and people of the faith, they will literally kill them, put them in prison, and execute. I want to say that regarding America, however, I've heard reports, and they may or may not be factual, but there are reports of crops being destroyed and food supplies being just wasted, just disposed of. I'm not sure all the reasons why. I know it may be related to the lack of demand, or not really demand, but the lack of farmers being able to ship out their products, their produce to restaurants, simply because the restaurant business is not, they're not getting a lot of customers right now. So that's one thing that is leading to that. But in my mind, it just sounds so illogical and really foolish for a nation what they need, especially in these times. So recall Joseph storing up 7 years of food during the years of plenty, 7 years of plenty, and then when the 7 years of famine came, they could then use that reserve and take what they needed in order to survive. But what we're seeing now is the exact opposite. If these reports are true, instead of storing up food, they're destroying food. So if a famine does come and will come, how much more severe would that famine be? And what scripture has said regarding cannibalism and people throwing gold and silver in the streets will most likely come true, because what's the point of your wealth and your money and your possessions if you can't eat them? You can't sustain your life on gold and silver and money and possessions, because even Yeshua said, our life does not consist is knowing Him. With our Father, it's a relationship to each other. We focus on those things first, and everything we need will be provided if we make that the number one, number two priority, respectively, loving God first and loving our neighbor secondly. And the Torah is an example to do that, how to go about that. Okay, weekly newsletter from sightedmoon.com. Shabbat Shalom, it is still Shabbat. And may Jehovah bless you all and set His angels over you. They are very real. And if we could see them, if you all opened our eyes and we could actually see them, you'd see they're pretty big too. They're very real and very large and very strong. And Jehovah actually sends them to those who love Him, who keep His Torah. And yeah, they can protect us and prevent evil to harm us. So I just pray that over all of you watching and listening. If you need, He will provide. Just like the ravens brought fruit, they brought food to Elijah. Maybe in even a greater level, on a greater scale. We'll see. But I have full faith, He will provide, because He has provided in the past for me, and I'm sure for a lot of believers. He's providing for me today, and He will provide in the future. So there's no end to His love for us. So that's all I have to say. Jehovah bless you all, and may He make your way prosperous. And I pray in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.